not a dangerous man. Thomas is put himself at great risk, as Gene and I did, to go against an establishment that wants to protect itself and is circling the wagons and determined. Well, the sad thing is, when we found out we were considered enemies of our own government since 1933, since the War Powers Act, so that Roosevelt could have the power to confiscate people's personally owned gold. But it wasn't just confiscate the gold, it was power to control transportation, communications, commodities, private enterprise, all these things. We don't really have a constitution. And to say he's a terrorist and he wants to overthrow the government, no, he wants to return the government to the rule of law, to the Constitution. And they've taken an oath, and we accepted their oath as a contract. That's one of the first things we did. We accepted their oath as a contract when we went to the legislature, and we personally served this to 10 legislators. And we put this on camera. We're not trying to hide anything. You know, we put it on camera. We want the people to know it's your government. We're responsible for what it does. And we are the highest. You know, the three branches of government are under the people. We created. We are the sovereigns. But we're treated like servants, and our government acts like God. So we got a big problem.
Mr. Hudok, do you think people are accusing Mr. Deegan of being a terrorist?
The people? I don't know about the people. I know the government is. Yeah, they're accusing him. But he isn't. He's a patriot, a true patriot.
Does he work for you specifically?
No, Thomas doesn't work for me. Thomas doesn't work for anybody that I know of. He considers himself a child of God, so I guess he's working for God. No, he doesn't work for me. We just agreed on a common a job that needed to be done that was common to not just Gene and Thomas and I, but really to all American people, not citizens, people, all American people who consider themselves free. We don't have freedom. If you do something which upsets the government, you're in trouble. You don't have to harm anyone or damage property. You are in trouble with the government, which is corporate, unfortunately. It's not government of, for, and by the people. It is government of corporations. And they've separated themselves from the people. And they say that they don't have to, well, they don't honor their oaths of office. And that's all we did was petition our government for redress of grievances, breach of contract, took it to the highest court in the land, and they basically ignored all our petitions. They never answered them. And when it went into court, the court was in default and dishonor, and that's very sad. I mean, they could have done the right thing. We asked them to do the right thing from the very beginning, and that's why I'm asking them to resign now. Just these heads that have been served, they need to resign and get someone in there who will honor their oath and abide by the Constitution and dissolve these corporations that they're hiding behind. Now, you can't have a corporation called Virginia West Legislature run out of 105 Bradley Drive, a private residence, and say that it's public. It is a private corporation. We want public government, not private government.
Are you in charge of a group? You said something about a website.
I have a website. I'm not in charge of any group.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the website called?
It's Hudok.info.
Okay.
I am running for governor,
Okay.
and I have another website. So if you go to Hudok.com, you're actually on my website running for governor.
And that's under the Constitution Party? you said
That's
earlier?
right. I am a member of the Constitution Party. I am their candidate for governor,
Okay.
and I will be traveling the state running for governor and talking about the issues that are important to the people. And I hope the media covers these issues, because the media is considered the fourth estate. It's their job, so that we have people who have information that they can properly make decisions with. We need that. We need the media. You know, we went to the media. We were always open. This was very open for the media or anyone. You know, I went to the Elkins the day we filed our first action in the Supreme Court. I personally went to the Charleston Daily Mail, the Charleston Gazette, West Virginia Public Broadcasting, and the Elkins Intermountain. The Elkins Intermountain is the only one who wrote an article in June about what's happened. I think this would have been a much different outcome had the media covered this from the very beginning. I think it would have been a different outcome if the media had done their job. So I'm saying, media, do your job, and citizens, take responsibility, become informed, make intelligent decisions.
Can you go on record as saying what this means? This is from the Dow Jones, and it says the headquarters is Military Affairs and Public Safety of West Virginia Department of, and all of the branches are in various jails throughout the state. The headquarters is at 1900 Kanawha Boulevard in Charleston.
Yeah, it's very sad that, you know, the military is not supposed to be involved in civilian operations. When we started researching the corporate connections, it's very scary because, for instance, the Bar Association, the West Virginia Bar, is a subcorporation of the West Virginia Supreme Court. And the West Virginia Supreme Court is a subcorporation of the U.S. Supreme Court. So in other words, we can see the ties, we can see the connections of this big club that we're not in, but subject to.
They are now, even though they are not by constitutional authority allowed to create law, they are doing just that, aren't they?
Yes. Well, we went into bizarro world, policy world, big time in '33. So what should be law is now dictated policy because we have a dictatorial government.
And that policy is what they are now trying to pawn off as law. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would call it pseudo law, not real law.
What is real law?
Well, first of all, real law. We base our laws on the Ten Commandments. We base our laws on Scripture. The judge used to walk into a courtroom with the Bible above his head, and that's why people stood. We didn't see the judge or the magistrate in there with the Bible. Okay?
Well, absolutely.
Because it's all case law, and case law can be so far away from constitutional law, which again is based on God's law, that we're way out on a limb. And I have heard it said many times by judges. My pastor being one, he was in a court case where he brought up the Constitution, and the judge said, "You will not bring up the Constitution in my courtroom." Well, if we don't bring up the supreme law of the land, the Constitution, in a courtroom, then what kind of court is it?
That is the million-dollar question. The one thing I didn't notice in that courtroom was a black robe, so that was different.
That's true. You have to go higher up in the court system to get to the black robes.
Which brings me to another point. Why is it that this particular court, this particular supposed jurisdiction, decided to pursue this when everything that I've been made aware of keeps that type of crime at a federal level?
It perplexed me. I thought, what are we doing in a magistrate court if we're talking about a felony? I don't know. I do know that there are usually traps laid to get you into to volunteer into their system, and people don't realize that they are voluntarily going in, and that's what we did with like Social Security and things. We became a ward of the state, and in my particular case, I got my Social Security card when I was 4 years old, and my parents went to open up a savings account. I don't think my parents realized what that meant when they got me a Social Security card. That made me a ward of the state. When when Child Protective Services goes after a child in a family and to exercise the state's power to remove a child from a family, the first thing they do is they go to the courthouse and they request a marriage license, because with that marriage license, and quite often the minister says, by the power invested by the authority of the state, by the power invested in me by the authority of the state, the state becomes a third party of your marriage. So they want your marriage certificate,
which we caught off guard. And he had
or
to
birth,
take
no,
it.
they want the marriage certificate if they're going after the child, because that gives them legitimacy, because you have let them be a third part of your marriage, and so they feel more powerful and probably protected by having your marriage certificate.
Lawful papers,
The next question that I've got to ask is, all licenses are revocable.
Yeah, licensed by Black's Law Dictionary is permission to do that which would otherwise be illegal. Okay, so they're saying getting married is illegal unless you get permission from the state. Traveling is illegal unless you get permission from the state. Basically, there isn't much you can do that isn't illegal unless you get permission from the state.
So we have to look to them for all of the privileges of being a citizen of the United States.
If you are a citizen, you are a ward.
That's why we had.
And there, if someone comes into my house, if someone wants to live under my roof, let's say somebody's having hard times or whatever, when they come into my house, they're under my rule. I'm not under their rule. Okay? When we surrender to the state through citizenship and all that, we are saying, we're a ward of you, and we're going to abide by what you tell us we can or cannot do. It's just as simple as that. We aren't free when we are citizens.
Well, for those that are not and have publicly declared their private status, that they are citizens of the state in which they reside, Americans, and under the United States Constitution the Constitution for the United States of America, circa 1789. Why is that the cross in front of the vampire? Why is that so devastatingly rejected by the court system now?
Because it threatens their big club. The big club that George Carlin said we're not part of. And if enough people did that, then they wouldn't have their big club. They want to keep their club.
And the thing that feeds the beast would no longer be forthcoming, which is the
right.
money.
Government is they don't produce; they simply take and redistribute, and sometimes give you some back. And so everyone wants to play the game of, well, let's get a good representative who will get as much back from the pot that we, but it's diminishing returns. You never get back as much as you put in. So the bigger government gets, the less the average person is going to have, because it's just going to be part of their bureaucracy, and that's under the best circumstances. They're not always giving you social services for the money that's being taken.
Well, this is legalized theft, is what it looks like. Legalized as opposed to lawful. And when people like Thomas call for the reversal of fortunes, the removal of the criminals, and they can only be described as such, it would be totally in character for them to rebel against him and his lawful right to say so. He has freedom of speech, does he not?
Yes, he does.
Did he exercise that freedom of speech when he was on those phone calls?
Yes, he did.
Did that threaten anybody?
Evidently, they thought it threatened them.
Enough so that they had to put extra personnel at the state capitol.
The state capitol, right.
Even though they know full well that no organization exists to be able to put boots on the ground to accomplish
I mean,
anything
excuse
akin
me.
to what he was talking about.
That is correct, and I put on my website the day before, earlier on the day before, that there was no one was to come to Charleston that day. You know,
But we were so
So,
afraid of the lack of
it doesn't
rule of law
matter
that we decided
what
to not
caveats.
vote for that, and we ended
I
up
like
going
that
to the
word
federal building
because it
and
is a
filed
legalese
our
word that they seem to
anti-complaint.
understand.
Robin Waters and
Whatever
the
those
officer,
are,
the state
it doesn't
police
matter if
officer,
we use them.
White.
well, R.V. White
It only
was served
matters
as
if they
well.
use
He
them.
he was the security officer.
Whatever the law
Not
is
nice.
that they perceive
Not a
to
nice
be
man.
Any other
true and
questions?
correct right now
I
is
came
what
in a
they
little late.
say
Can I
is the
vote
law,
for you?
not what we say is the law.
Uh,
How could that
My
be?
name is Leonard
Because
Frank,
last time I
Council
checked,
Bar Review.
there are
People are
4
at the
levels
top,
here.
right.
There's the people,
people,
there's the
HARV
executive,
is
there's the
Victor
judicial, and
IEW.
there's the
legislature.
legislature.
I am Alicia
Legislature.
Lutz.
You know, there's
Lutz.
4,
R-hyphen
and the
L.
top of the list
R-O-L-W.
Is the people.
Okay.
has always been
You
the
were from
people.
Arizona, you
And
said
yet,
you were from
they've now
California.
usurped that and flipped it to put this
Please
massive
report the
body of
truth.
people
That's all we ask.
at the bottom of the
Please
control
don't be
of just
biased.
those on
We're
top.
not bad guys. I'm an American.
And you know, you
born
said
and raised, so is he, so
they
is
can be
everybody.
called
I
criminals.
love
Well,
my country.
if they
I'm
didn't know they
concerned
were
about my
criminals
country.
before
We're
we
losing
filed
her.
all our paperwork,
It's our
they knew they
duty.
were criminals after,
The
by the
Declaration
time
of
we'd
Independence
filed
tells us
everything.
it's our duty. When
So
the
do you think
government
that
gets so
this is
tyrannical that it
basically
no
their
longer adheres
response
to the will of the
to being
people,
called out?
that's us. It's
Yeah, they're just
time
trying to
get these people out of there
protect
and
themselves,
reinstitute
continue
things
the
to be
status
proper
quo,
under the Constitution
and
and the
stifle
rule of law.
any resistance.
We are, after all, a republic of laws. Thank
People.
you.
Thank you.
People are the only resistance. He's trying to talk to people.
Yes, he is.
They're not listening. Why do you suppose that is?
You know, there's no simple answer to that. I've taught school for 40 years. I saw the conditioning in the public school system. I see the conditioning and the mind manipulation in the media. I see a moral